Welcome to Science Exposed, the show where we take a deep dive,
Yeah.
into the most fascinating scientific topics,
Well, curated.
by the brilliant Dr. Cameron Jones.
Absolutely.
So today we're diving into something you might not expect, the world of allergies. But
Yeah.
we're not just talking about like itchy eyes and runny noses.
Right.
We're looking at a puzzling trend.
Okay.
As pollen levels are rising,
Yeah.
certain fungal spores are actually on the decline.
It is.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
What does it mean for your allergies?
A fascinating puzzle, isn't it? We've got a recent study from Seoul, Korea, covering a whopping 25 years of data.
25 years of data.
That's going to help us unpack this inverse relationship.
Wow, that's a serious commitment to allergy research.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it gives us a really valuable long-term perspective on how these trends are playing out.
So let's start with the big picture.
Okay.
We know climate change is impacting our health in all sorts of ways. And allergies are definitely on the front lines, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the main drivers here is carbon dioxide, or CO2.
Right.
It's basically acting like a super fertilizer for plants.
More CO2, more plants.
Yeah.
Sounds good, right?
Mhm.
More green spaces, cleaner air.
Not so fast.
Oh,
More plants often translate to more pollen.
okay.
And there's even evidence suggesting that pollen becomes more allergenic in environments with higher CO2 levels.
Hold on. So it's not just that there's more pollen,
Right.
but the pollen itself is getting more potent.
Exactly.
Wow.
There were some fascinating studies done with oak trees and ragweed.
Okay.
In one study, oak trees exposed to higher CO2 levels produced 13 times more pollen
Oh my goodness.
than those grown in normal CO2 conditions.
13 times.
Yeah.
I'm sneezing just thinking about it.
And when they looked at ragweed pollen, they found that the concentration of a major allergen, a 1,
Right.
almost tripled in higher CO2 environments. So more pollen, and it's packing a bigger punch.
Right.
What else is going on here?
Well, climate change is also stretching out pollen seasons.
Oh.
Warmer temperatures mean plants are starting to produce pollen earlier and continuing later into the fall.
Okay.
So it's not just quantity, it's timing too.
So allergy sufferers are getting hit harder for a longer period.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a local phenomenon.
Right.
A study looking at pollen trends across the Northern Hemisphere found that pollen seasons are getting longer
Really?
in many different regions.
Wow. So that's the bad news on the pollen front.
Yeah.
But what about the fungi?
Okay.
This is where it gets interesting, right? Why are some fungi on the decline when everything else seems to be flourishing?
It is fascinating. Remember how we talked about climate change leading to more intense rainfall,
Yes.
but fewer rainy days overall?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Heavier downpours, but spaced further apart.
Well, that seems to be playing a role in the fungal decline.
Fungi need moisture to grow and release their spores.
Right.
Fewer rainy days mean fewer opportunities for them to thrive.
So it's almost like a shrinking window of opportunity for these fungi.
Yeah.
Less consistent moisture, less chance to spread their spores.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this is where the Seoul study comes in.
Okay.
Their 25 years of data really shines a light on this.
All right, let's dive into that Seoul study data.
Okay.
What did they find?
They didn't just track the concentration of fungal spores in the air.
Uh-huh.
They also looked at something called sensitization rates.
Okay.
That's the percentage of people in the population who are allergic to these specific fungi.
So they were looking at the actual impact on people,
Right.
not just the spore counts themselves.
Exactly.
That's really smart.
And what's so interesting is that the overall concentration of fungal spores,
Okay.
particularly from species like Alternaria and Cladosporium,
Right.
has been steadily decreasing over the past 25 years.
And what about those sensitization rates? Were they dropping too?
They were dropping even more dramatically.
Wow.
In 1998, about 3.5% of the population in Seoul was sensitized to Alternaria. By 2022, that number had plummeted to just 0.2%.
Wow, that's a huge drop.
Yeah.
What about cladosporium?
A similar story, sensitization rates fell from 4.4% in 1998 to just 0.2% in 2022.
So we are seeing this inverse relationship playing out in real-world allergy patterns.
It's a good analogy.
It's almost like these two trends,
Yeah.
the rising pollen and declining fungi, are playing tug-of-war with our immune systems.
But it's important to remember it's not 100% certain that climate change is the direct cause of this inverse relationship.
Right, because there could be other factors at play that
Exactly.
we haven't fully accounted for.
Air pollution, for example, could be influencing both pollen and fungal spore levels.
Yeah.
And there are always complex ecological interactions that we're still unraveling.
So what we're seeing is a fascinating correlation, but we need more research to really nail down the cause and effect.
Precisely. But even with this uncertainty, right?
The findings from the SOUL study raise some important questions about the future of allergies in a changing world.
Okay, so let's bring this back to our listeners.
Okay.
What does all of this mean for you? Should you be stocking up on allergy meds or breathing a sigh of relief?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. On the one hand, it seems likely that pollen allergies are going to continue to worsen
Yeah.
as pollen counts rise and those pollen seasons lengthen.
Yeah. Not exactly the news we were hoping for, but it's not all that surprising, I guess.
Right. But on the other hand, if this trend of declining fungal spores keeps going,
Right.
we might actually see a decrease in fungal allergies, which would be a bit of a silver lining, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
It'll depend on location and individual sensitivities.
So for some people, this could mean trading one allergy for another.
It's possible,
Yeah.
but there's another layer to this story that we haven't touched on yet.
Okay.
Human activities beyond just carbon emissions.
Things like deforestation and urbanization can really shake things up when it comes to local ecosystems. And that, in turn, affects the balance of plants and fungi.
Okay, so how do things like deforestation and urbanization tie into allergy trends?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
When you remove trees, you create these open spaces, which are perfect breeding grounds for wind-pollinated plants. More open space, more wind-pollinated plants, more pollen.
And on the flip side, when we replace natural landscapes with concrete, we're shrinking the habitats for fungi to thrive.
Exactly.
So we're essentially tilting the scales in favor of pollen and against fungi.
Exactly. And then you have air pollution to add to the mix.
All right.
Pollutants can damage plants, making them more susceptible to fungal infections.
Right.
But they can also directly impact fungal growth and their ability to release spores.
It's amazing how interconnected everything is.
Yeah.
It's like a giant complex web.
It is.
And it's hard to separate the effects of climate change from all these other changes we're making to the planet.
It is a complicated web, but even with all this complexity, there are things we can do to try and manage these shifting allergy trends and protect ourselves.
Okay, so what can our listeners do to protect themselves? What kind of practical advice can we give them?
Well, first and foremost, staying informed is key.
Yep.
Know what the local pollen and fungal spore levels are in your area. Many weather apps and websites provide this information now.
Right, so you can check the pollen forecast just like you check the weather forecast.
Exactly. And if you know you're sensitive to certain allergens,
Right.
you can take steps to minimize your exposure.
Okay.
Things like using air filters in your home or wearing a mask when you're outdoors can really help.
Those are great everyday tips. What about in more serious cases where those simple measures aren't enough?
If you're experiencing severe or persistent allergy symptoms, it's definitely time to see an allergist.
Okay.
They can determine what you're specifically allergic to and recommend personalized treatment options, including medications or therapies.
So there are effective treatments available, but knowing when to seek professional help is important.
Absolutely. And beyond those individual actions,
Right.
it's important to remember that addressing the root causes of these shifting allergy trends will require broader societal changes as well.
Okay, so what kind of societal changes are we talking about? What can we do collectively to tackle this issue?
Well, first and foremost, tackling climate change is essential.
Right.
Reducing carbon emissions is crucial to slowing the pace of warming and mitigating its impact on ecosystems, which in turn impacts allergy patterns.
Right, we have to address the underlying driver of these changes.
Right.
But as we've been discussing, it's not just about carbon emissions. We need to rethink our approach to land use and development too.
Exactly. Protecting our existing forests, planting more trees in urban areas, and promoting sustainable agricultural practices can all contribute to a more balanced and resilient environment.
And those changes could have a ripple effect on both pollen and fungal spore levels, potentially reducing the burden of allergies in the long run.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
It's going to take a concerted effort from individuals, communities, and governments to make those changes happen.
So it's a complex issue with no easy solutions.
Yeah.
But awareness, individual action, and collective change are all critical pieces of the puzzle.
Well said. And I think it highlights the main message here, which is that our health is inextricably linked to the health of our environment As our climate and ecosystems change, so too will the patterns of allergies and other health challenges.
So we need to start thinking about allergies not just as an individual health issue,
Right.
but as an indicator of the overall health of our planet.
Exactly. And that brings us to an important question.
What's that?
If climate change continues to drive these shifts in pollen and fungal spore levels, are we simply trading one set of allergies for another, or could there be more profound changes in the way our immune systems respond to the environment over time?
That's a thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
And it really sets the stage for what we'll be exploring in part 3 of this deep dive. The latest research on allergy treatments and what the future holds for managing these conditions in a changing world. Welcome back to Science Exposed. We've been exploring, this fascinating connection between climate change pollen and fungal spores.
Yeah.
And how it's shaping the future of allergies.
Yeah.
It's been a real eye-opener.
It is a complex issue with far-reaching implications.
Yeah.
And as we've seen, it's not just about sniffles and sneezes.
Right.
It's about understanding the intricate relationship between our health and the health of our planet.
Exactly. But now I'm curious, with all these changes happening around us, what's on the horizon for allergy treatments? Are there any exciting breakthroughs we should be aware of?
There's a lot of exciting research happening in the field of allergy treatment, actually.
Oh, really?
One area that's generating a lot of buzz is immunotherapy.
Oh, okay.
It's essentially training your immune system to be less reactive to allergens.
I've heard of that. It's like giving your immune system a crash course in chill out when it comes to those pesky allergens.
It's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
There are a couple of different approaches.
Okay.
One is subcutaneous immunotherapy, or SCIT.
Oh.
That involves getting regular injections of small amounts of the allergen.
So you're basically exposing your body to a tiny bit of what you're allergic to over and over again, and eventually it learns to tolerate it.
Exactly. It's like desensitizing your immune system.
Right.
The other approach is sublingual immunotherapy, or SLIT.
Okay.
This involves placing drops or tablets containing the allergen under your tongue.
Interesting. So are these treatments effective? Do they really work?
The research is really promising.
Okay.
Numerous studies have shown that immunotherapy can significantly reduce allergy symptoms.
Wow.
And the need for medications over the long term.
Wow, that's encouraging. So is this like a cure for allergies?
While it's not a cure, it can provide long-lasting relief.
Okay.
And what's really exciting is that immunotherapy goes beyond just masking symptoms. It actually modifies the underlying allergic disease process.
Okay, so it's addressing the root of the problem, not just the symptoms. That's a big deal.
It is. And there's another development in allergy treatment that's worth mentioning.
Okay.
Researchers are working on medications that target specific immune pathways involved in allergic reactions.
So instead of just taking antihistamines or nasal sprays to manage symptoms, we might have drugs that block the allergic reaction at the source.
Exactly.
Okay.
These targeted therapies have the potential to be even more effective than traditional medications and with fewer side effects.
That's game-changing. Sounds like there's a lot to be hopeful about when it comes to the future of allergy treatments.
Absolutely. And as our understanding of the immune system, allergies, and the role of environmental factors continues to evolve, we can expect even more innovative therapies to emerge in the years to come.
That's great news for everyone who suffers from allergies. It seems like we've uncovered a lot of information in this deep dive, from rising pollen counts to declining fungal spores to the complexities of climate change and human impact and promising new treatments on the horizon. It's been quite a journey.
It has been a fascinating journey.
Yeah.
And I think the key takeaway for our listeners is this.
Okay.
While a changing climate may present new challenges for allergy sufferers, science is constantly advancing.
Right.
There is hope on the horizon.
Okay.
New treatments are emerging, and they offer real promise for long-term relief and a better quality of life.
Well said. And I think it's important for our listeners to remember that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
The more we understand about allergies, the better equipped we are to manage them effectively. Stay informed, be proactive about your health, and don't hesitate to seek expert advice from an allergist.
And speaking of staying informed, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Science Exposed for more deep dives into the world of science. We love sharing these fascinating topics with you.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay curious, and let's keep exploring the wonders of science together.